Kumar, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing your insight there. Of course, further discussions expected to be had later today as the fragile ceasefire continues to hold. We will, of course, bring you all of those updates as we get them. Moving on now to Europe. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has said he is ready to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Turkey following calls by US President Donald Trump for immediate direct talks. The potential summit, which would mark their first face-to-face encounter since 2019, comes amid heightened tensions and a push from European leaders for a 30-day ceasefire. Let's listen in to some European diplomats who have had comments on the next steps towards achieving peace.
In order to go into any peace talk, there has to be ceasefire. And we also need to see that Russia wants this to show goodwill to sit down and talk to the Ukrainians. So it is not there. We have to put pressure on Russia to really want peace and to sit down and to talk with Ukraine.
Our position is very clear. We want peace, we want negotiations. The precondition for this is, of course, to be able to have a truce, unconditional truce in the air, sea, ground for 30 days that can create the space for negotiation.
Meanwhile, Putin, in a prime-time televised address, proposed direct negotiations without preconditions, though his aides later insisted talks must reflect the 2022 draft peace plan and current battlefield's realities. Demands Ukraine view as unacceptable. Zelensky confirmed he would attend in Turkey and challenged Putin to do the same, calling on Russia not to look for excuses. Trump, who may influence future US aid to Ukraine, urged Kyiv to accept the offer, calling it a step toward ending the bloodbath. While Ukraine's ceasefire plan remains in place for Monday, both sides appear far from common ground. A Kremlin rejection of ultimatums underscores the fragile state of diplomacy. Meanwhile, EU diplomats stated that the ceasefire depends heavily on Putin's willingness to attain peace. Let's listen in to their comments.
Well, we want to see also that Russia wants peace. I mean, it takes two to want peace. It takes only one to want war. And what we see that Russia clearly wants war. So it has been over 2 months already when Ukraine agreed to unconditional ceasefire. Russia has just played games. So I think they are playing games right now as well.
It would be sensible to end this misfortune, this criminal war. But Mr. Putin is not sensible.
Well, joining us to discuss these latest developments in the past 24 hours or so is Glenn Grant, ex-advisor of Defence Minister of Ukraine, who's joining us from Riga, Latvia. Glenn, as always, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with us. We had a similar conversation yesterday, looking at the situation and an ultimatum towards Vladimir Putin. Has Volodymyr Zelenskiy gone one up by calling Putin out for direct talks?
I think to a degree he has, yes. I mean, he's made it much harder for Trump to pressurize him because he's already sort of like agreed that I will go to the talks and I will be there. It'd be very, very interesting to see if Putin actually turns up. Somehow I don't think he will, but I mean, even if he does, we know that, you know, he's already said no preconditions, but he's laid out a mass of preconditions. He and his team in the last couple of weeks, you know, that we still want the four regions, and that's pretty much not going to change. That you don't join NATO, and that you don't take foreign support. And I mean, all these things, they haven't changed in months, and they're not going to change now. And I loved your sort of comment about, you know, fragile diplomacy. I don't think there's any diplomacy at all at the moment. I think there's just time wasting by European diplomats who are showboating, walking up and down and going places and talking loudly, but actually they're just being fools. To be honest, they're being fools. They're doing and getting nowhere, and anybody with half a brain can see that they're not going to get anywhere. So it's just time wasting. They should be getting down, working out how to win this war, because this war is not going away.
Glenn, I posed this question to you yesterday about Donald Trump and his administration, but I'm going to pitch it to you now after we've heard from some European leaders. You say there that they're doing nothing. What do they need to do? They've spoken about sanctions, they've spoken about putting pressure on Putin, but is that enough in your eyes?
Well, it depends. I mean, let's just take sanctions. I mean, you can make sanctions much, much more cruel than they're doing at the moment. I mean, basically, you can put sanctions against anybody that deals with Russia. You can crush the banking system against Russia. There are all sorts of ways that the sanctions can be made much harder. Yes, it does hurt the Europeans a bit more. And Trump actually said that he can do some of these things, and he can do. But I think that sanctions on their own aren't going to work. Come on, we've been doing sanctions against Iran and North Korea forever, and they haven't stopped them being, creating weapons and creating, in the case of North Korea, creating a nuclear weapon. So that's not enough. The only way we're going to beat Putin is by actually fighting him, or by, as the case may be, helping Ukraine fight him and defeat him. And that means actually sorting ourselves out in terms of what weapons he needs, in terms of what training he needs, and getting in there and doing it properly. Because we've only been scraping the surface so far. We're just light touch, I think, would be the best way. Trying to win by doing things at arm's length. But you can't do that. You can't win a war at arm's length. And Zelensky's got to be told this as well. They've got to get a bit harder with Zelensky, a bit less lovey-dovey, and a little bit more, you've got to get your act together, mate, sort of attitude.
Glenn, you spoke about the issue around preconditions. Of course, Russia says that can't happen, but then Putin's aides have clearly given several preconditions ahead of talks.
Yeah.
Given that there is so much difference between what both sides are looking at, how does a deal ever get agreed? Who's going to be making concessions, and what might they be?
I don't think either side are going to make concessions. Russia's not going to. Come on, I mean, Putin has shown he's not going to make concessions. He's had 11 years of this war, and he hasn't made any concessions so far at all. So he's not about to start now, especially after what, in his view, would be a very, very successful parade. I mean, he turned up with all those leaders, and effectively he must have thought, it was Christmas for him to get so many people turn up and sit next to him, especially the Chinese president. So you're not going to get any concessions from Putin. And Zelensky's between a rock and a hard place, because the country has lost too many people. There's too much blood been spilt now to give in. Okay, they might accept a ceasefire on the current lines if there is a chance that diplomacy is going to, in the long term, actually get things back. But there are very few people that want that. Most people now believe that they have the capacity to sort out their defense industry and actually defeat Putin. But your average person in Ukraine also believes that Zelensky's got to change his act and actually stop choosing his friends and actually start choosing the best people in the country to do things. Because friends are not the best people to make it work.
Glenn, we are running short on time, but I do want to ask one more question. Myself, as an Englishman, growing up, understanding and studying the Second World War, appeasement was a big, obviously, topic and talking point. Given the fact that you're saying there is this impasse and there's pressure from Western allies, Ukrainian allies, do you think that the rhetoric from them might change if we see another several months or years of conflict without a negotiation and resolution?
I think that actually, if we see another few years without resolution, I think that people will begin to get harder because the hybrid warfare is going to start digging into countries in ways they don't like at the moment. I mean, we've just seen that Poland's actually admitted that last year's big fire in their shopping centre was Russia. When we have a few shopping centres burnt down in Britain and people realise that Russia's going to do things like this, damage our airfields, damage other things, I think that the mood will change gradually against Russia. At the moment, it's benign across much of Europe. I don't think that will last.
Glenn, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, all the time that this conflict